If you look at the history of Midland, the Wildcatters and the hard work they've done, the risk they've taken to get where they're at, that is right exactly where we are with the space industry right now. It is a new frontier and it is something we're exploring. Not only exploring, we need to defend it at the same time. If we're gonna have freedom of operation, we have to have the Space Force helping us out there. NASA goes to the space under the protection of the Space Force.
Eric McManus,
Sir.
thank you again for coming in today. Be on the show. Want to talk all things space, Space Force Association. But before we get there, give us your background a little bit.
Well, I joined the Navy in 2005, and I grew up in Southeast Texas. And in 2005, Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Rita hit the Gulf Coast. And when Hurricane Rita hit my hometown, we didn't have college to go to. I roofed houses and decided, well, I need to do something. And so I joined the military. I joined the Navy. And I went through a program called AECF. It's Advanced Electronics and Computer Field.
Okay.
And in that program, you go through a series of schools. I went to school for about 2 years to learn about advanced air defense. And so I focused primarily on learning the Aegis weapon system. It's the largest seagoing weapon system in the world. I did 4 deployments in Pearl Harbor on Chafee. I did an overhaul on in the yards on Chosin. From there, I went to White Sands Missile Range to do weapon system development for the Aegis Baseline 9 and Baseline 10 development. That particular development was with hypersonic defensibility. So we were developing Standard Missile 6 to have engagement capabilities with hypersonics. That missile goes approximately Mach 3.5, which is 3.5 times the speed of sound, and which is very fast. And so we did 12 live fire exercises there. On the 12th live fire, I got to shoot down a QF4.
What's that?
A so an F4 is just a regular fighter plane.
Okay.
The old school F4s. They go Mach 2.4. They carry, I believe, about 6,000 kilograms of payload. They're built to get away from missiles.
Okay.
From there, I went to Lockheed Martin. I joined Lockheed Martin and I ran the Aegis Fleet Readiness and Sustainability team. What that team essentially does is, if there's a failure or in a weapon system in the Navy, they have a regional maintenance crew that solves the problem. If they're not solving the problem, or if they need it escalated, they go to a big government team that can go out and solve it, or they call Lockheed Martin, who was the original manufacturer of that system, and then we go out and repair it. So I had a team of 12 engineers, and we would deploy to combat zones and do preventative and corrective repairs on this weapon system. I recognized the problem though. And it was that, especially in the forward deployed ships, and forward deployed means that these ships were getting sent out to sea 300 plus days a year.
Okay.
So I came up with an overhaul program. It's called a Class B overhaul. And what I promised was that we would overhaul 3 ships with less than $800,000 for less than 8,000 hours. And so we would do it in 90 days. And I was able to overhaul 3 ships. One of them was the oldest Aegis asset in the world. And when that ship deployed after our overhaul, it outperformed the newest Aegis asset in the world. Our group was awarded a $35 million contract with a 5-year period of performance by Missile Defense Agency and Naval Sea Systems Command. At that moment, I decided, wow, I can make money for Lockheed Martin. I might be able to make money for me.
Okay.
And so I'm from Texas. I decided it was time to move back to Texas, and I started subcontracting to primes for semiconductor manufacturing. And so I was able to pick up some space projects, and I did one of them in particular that I'm most proud of is a GPS-3 satellite. I did the low noise amplifiers for them. So they're these 5mm by 5mm packages. But to get this package, had to travel 35,000 kilometers into space. To get it qualified to do that, it took me about 18 months of just manufacturing over and over and over again and putting it through qualifications tests. Well, I did that for a little while. Then I started working in the startup community in Austin. I've worked with 9 startups now in some capacity, mostly commercial robotics.
Before we talk about the Space Force Association, just to clarify, you are the director of the Space Force Association Texas chapter.
Yes.
Here in Midland, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I started the Space Force Association Texas chapter in 2022.
Okay.
And that's a nonprofit. The Space Force Association is the nonprofit directly associated to the Space Force. So every military branch has their own nonprofit. For example, the Army has AUSA, Armed Uniformed Services. The The Air Force has Air Force Association.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
And so the Space Force has Space Force Association, and what these nonprofits in general do is bring community awareness about what these organizations or agencies are for.
You're the biggest advocate for it and educate
Right.
the public, right?
So we try to go into communities, understand where they're going to be at, where they want to be with space, and
Okay.
where their understanding is of space, and try to give them a little bit of education. And so our mission is to educate, inform, and advocate.
Okay.
The education piece is really interesting because it actually comes from research. We'll go out and do research for communities or for companies to help them understand where they're going to fit into the Space Force, or where the space, maybe do that for the Space Force, and where technology fits in there as well.
So in terms of the Space Force itself, right? It's relatively new.
Mhm.
Like there's always been some sort of space command or some sort of under the Air Force. Is that correct? Like over for decades, right?
Yes. Every branch has always all have their own space groups.
Okay.
And this would be Space Command would host this as a joint command, and all these branches would come up together, and you would have a Navy guy and an Air Army gal and maybe an Air Force person, all working together on a space mission. Now the Space Force is set up kind of like an umbrella or a joint operation where they provide freedom of operation in the space domain. The Navy takes care of everything on the water. The Army takes care of everything on land.
Right.
The Marines take care of everything that's transitory. That
Okay.
means from water to land. The Air Force takes care of everything in the air. The Space Force takes care of everything in space
And beyond.
and beyond.
Nice. Okay. So that makes sense. Like to finally branch off to be its own dedicated branch, right? They're called Guardians, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So like finding new people, new enlisted Guardians and things like that, right? It's only about 5-6 years old, right?
December 2019 was when initialized,
Okay.
and or was commissioned, I guess I should say. And then they have about 9,000 Guardians in service.
Okay.
It's growing rapidly.
So again, for the average person, aka me, the Space Force is not Star Wars. It's not lightsabers and fighting in space.
No.
It's more around satellite installations and sort of basically helping the United States keep its citizens safe, right, from bad actors out there who could utilize satellites and
Absolutely.
things in space.
Information security,
Okay.
surveillance, reconnaissance. All of this is generally what needs to be maintained by the Space Force from our space operations. Information security is super important to us. So we were just talking about how our phones, your wife can find you at any time. If we lost a GPS constellation, your wife might never find you again. Not in that way.
Sure. Okay.
She'll never find you through your phone again.
Got it.
So there's a lot of contestable issues, though. What happens when we have assets in space that provide us with national security information, and there are bad actors out there who want to just park between our satellites and our ground stations and collect that data and then use that data to harm us?
And they can potentially like take those down, which would obviously like impact military operations and things like that around the world.
Yeah.
So, okay, all of that makes sense because when I first moved here, and I've only been here since 2020,
Mhm.
I didn't recognize that the airport was also a spaceport. You know what I mean? My brain went to, oh, like space shuttles are like, why are Midland? You know what I mean? And so can you talk about like how Midland factors into all of this?
The oldest spaceport in Texas is in Midland, and it was the first spaceport in the country to be joint located with an airport. The uniqueness of this, and I can go on, it's incredible, because imagine that there's nowhere else in the country where you can have civil aviation occurring with high-speed flight at the same time, because Midland has wide open airspace. We have a lot of land here. We're able to do these things. We're able to do it fast. Also, if you look at the history of Midland, the Wildcatters and the hard work they've done, the risk they've taken to get where they're at, that is right exactly where we are with the space industry right now. It is a new frontier, and it is something we're exploring. Not only exploring, we need to defend it at the same time. If we're going to have freedom of operation, we have to have the Space Force helping us out there. NASA goes to the space under the protection of the Space Force.
Okay. And that makes a lot of sense, right? It's like, yeah, because I feel like all I meet are incredible entrepreneurs here
Yeah.
in Midland, and it's just decades after decades of decades of just incredible entrepreneurs. And so I think, yeah, what you're saying like makes total sense. Like this is a whole new frontier.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a ton of entrepreneurs, a ton of new industries and companies that are formed. Can you talk about some of the businesses that are already sort of spawning up here?
Oh yeah. Well, AST Mobile is a big hot topic. It is the second largest space company in the nation, hosted right here in Midland, Texas. It was grown to a $10 billion company here. Very impressive, incredibly impressive. Um,
And they're around satellite, right?
yeah, they
Mobile-
provide
mobile-
cellular services basically
Okay.
from space. And so the way cell phones work right now is there's a tower and you go every 10 miles, there needs to be a new tower that pings to your phone, or maybe 15 miles. But what happens if the satellites are just above you and you never, and you're in an airplane, you still get cell service. If you're from anywhere on Earth, you get cell service. Instead of having these horizontal signals, it's just being straight down to us. And that's what AST Mobile is providing. I think it's incredible, and I look forward to that future.
Is that similar? Because I think, is that similar to like a Starlink, or is that internet mostly?
That's internet.
Okay.
But yeah, it's similar. It's just frequency bands are the difference and modalities.
Okay. Are there any other businesses? I mean, that are,
Yes, absolutely. So we have Space Nation here. We're still providing space STEM education or experience for people who want to do astronaut type understanding and learning.
I do.
Absolutely. They do camps actually here in Midland. So they do a 3-day camp.
Eric, you're talking my language.
Yeah.
I grew up with Space Camp, the movie.
Oh, yeah. That's what they do out here. They'll do a 3-day camp, and it's a full experience of a lunar living on.
Can you get me to skip the line a little bit?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. This is being recorded. You're on camera now. I'm in Space Camp. I'm getting a suit.
Yeah.
I asked Sarah Harris the same thing from the NDC. I said, I don't want necessarily to go to space. That sounds a little scary.
Yeah.
But I want the experience of it. In your opinion, is Midland becoming like a true space hub?
Midland is the example of a new space city.
Okay.
Where I say this very often. If you use old space tools to build new space, you'll get old space, and then we lose. And so what is old space? Old space is not reusable rockets. It's not making satellites refuelable. It's not providing services in space. It's just sending up probes and collecting data. New space requires that when we put a satellite in space, it has 9 payloads on it, 12 payloads, and they're all collecting data and doing a job. New space is refueling satellites. New space is cleaning up debris. New space is multiple avenues of launching into space. So one of the things we're working on here with the Starfighters, a lot of people have heard about the Starfighters, right? The F-104 is a great plane. It goes Mach 2.2 at 120,000 feet. And so if you're able to do that, that's right there in the stratosphere.
Okay.
If you're able to do that and kick that plane up and launch a rocket from it, you're doing what's called an air launch. With that rocket, and then it goes up to 350,000 feet. It can deploy satellites out of it. And then that plane just drives right back down and lands in Midland, and they refuel it, put another rocket on it full of satellites, and go again. They can do that every 20 minutes. If the technology is proved out, they're successful in there. And the reason they're going to be able to do it rapidly here in Midland is because we have the spaceport, and at the spaceport, we have high-speed corridors. It's actually the only, from what I understand, it's the only commercial high-speed corridor in the nation.
What does that mean?
So in the 1970s, the FAA regulated supersonic flight out of commercial activities. Civil aviation will go supersonic, which means above the speed of sound.
Okay.
Because when you go above the speed of sound, you break the sound barrier, and that creates a sonic boom. Well, in the 1960s and early 70s, when they were developing all this, it was also the same time as the Cold War. And so if you hear something that sounds like bombs going off in the air all the time, people were genuinely terrified. I think they were terrified.
You're going to be under your
But yeah, exactly. And so the FAA was kind of like, hey, let's just keep aviation below the speed of sound. The Condor was already grandfathered in, but that was the last supersonic commercial flight between London and New York, I believe.
Oh, okay. All right. I remember that.
But nowadays, commercially, that's opening up because we need this for space. So the best use case for this, not the best, I think the best use case for this is launching satellites into space and coming back every 20 minutes and doing it over and over and over again so we can proliferate space as fast as we can. And by proliferate, I mean we put American technologies into space in full force, rapidly. That allows us to have dominance and freedom of operation. The other thing is logistics. If we're able to get this plane to go Mach 2, over the speed of sound, times 2, Mach 2, and launch something, the vehicle that we use to go into the other 350,000 feet can be a lot smaller because you're already going that much faster. To go from 0 to 350,000 feet takes a lot of fuel.
Okay.
It takes a lot of fuel to get that plane to go Mach 2.2, but it takes a lot less fuel for that rocket to get to space.
Okay.
And jet fuel is commonplace. So That's one of the cool advancements here. Now take that plane and they're going to launch something from Midland to Saudi Arabia. And they're going to take that rocket and it's going to go hypersonic halfway around the world and then go land in Saudi Arabia somewhere and deliver a product or a service. Now that is space economy.
Explain space economy, like
Okay.
to the masses.
Yes. So there is terrestrial economies, and yes, aerospace or space is an economy down here. But in space, if we were having an in-space economy, that looks like there's one very unique company I absolutely love called Orbit Fab. And Orbit Fab's slogan is gas stations in space. And so
Okay.
most satellites operate on hydrazine or some form of hydrogen peroxide that turns into hydrazine. He's able to go into space with a shuttle that can connect to satellites and refuel them. And then someone on Earth is paying for that service to occur in space. And so now we have a real space economy where there's people down here earning money to pay for things up there. In space services, I call them tow trucks in space, but that's active debris remediation or getting stuff out of the way that we don't want in the way.
There's a lot of junk in space.
There's a really cool website. It's called Privateer by Wayfinder or Wayfinder by Privateer.
Okay.
It shows you everything that's in space down to 10 centimeters. Maybe some smaller stuff than that. But when you get smaller than 10 centimeters, the resolution, the radars we have on Earth and the sensors we have in space struggle to see things smaller than that. So they speculate that there's over 1 million pieces of debris in space. Everything from paint chips to little pieces of metal, all the way up to rocket fuselages.
Okay.
And we can see those easily because
Sure.
they're bigger. But here's the scary thing. So it's scary for space. The minimum speed you can go into space without falling into Earth is 17,000 miles per hour.
Okay. I'm trying to picture things. This is difficult.
Yeah.
Very fast.
I did ballistic missile defense.
Okay,
And
yeah.
so if you're going to shoot down a satellite, you're going to shoot down something in space that's going 17,000 miles an hour, you got to go way faster than that.
Sure.
But if you're going 17,000 miles an hour and you have to a head-on collision, because that makes the math easy, a head-on collision with something else that's 17,000 miles an hour, you have, and let's say that piece of debris is 10 centimeters. The kinetic energy created from that contact is equivalent to a MOAB, the mother of all bombs. It's
Okay.
the largest airburst round we can make on Earth. You would have 50 miles of destruction in space, debris would be everywhere, and probably the next thing that would happen is there would be a lot more explosions. This would be a 10 centimeter, so something the size of a softball.
Okay.
And that's all it takes. You go
Okay.
down to 1 centimeter, at that same kinetic energy, it's the equivalent of getting shot point blank with a 9mm. That's still going to destroy your satellite and create a little bit of debris too.
Wow.
And so we've seen this where there's failures in space and you know that they had some issues a couple of years ago. I'm struggling to remember, but that a paint chip I think hit a radiator on one of the life support services on the International Space Station. It was a global scramble to get that fixed.
Wow.
And it was a paint chip. And this is going so fast. Imagine you're sitting on the International Space Station, you're looking out the window, like, I got to see this debris. What's this look like? It's going so fast, you're not going to see it. You're going to get hit. And it's so small that nothing can see it.
Right.
So active debris remediation is very important. It's coming down the pipe. That is a new space venture. There are companies working on it, but at the moment, there's nobody cleaning up anything smaller than rocket fuselages. We can deorbit those things pretty easily.
So obviously Midland is known for oil and gas, energy. How do those, what's the symbiotic nature between space and energy in the future?
There's a lot.
Okay.
There's a whole lot. Number one, the manufacturers of anything for oil and gas have to meet regulations for doing this high pressure underground drilling.
Mhm.
The regulations almost one for one match for what we have to do. And I talked about my certificate of conformance and all the tests I have to go through, shock and vibe, it's all the same. So if you're manufacturing in Midland for oil and gas, you can manufacture for aerospace.
Okay.
That's one adjacent thing that could happen rapidly. And there's satellite buses we need manufactured, we need tanks made, we need all kinds of stuff. And I know everybody in Midland knows how to do that better than anybody else in the world. So there's that.
Okay.
Infrastructure. I don't think anybody can build it faster than oil and gas and energy. I mean, I don't. If we needed to put up a a vertical launch complex on short order
Right.
and come up with an infrastructure for that, I'm calling oil and gas to come up with that. They'll do it faster than anybody else. On top of that, you have very interesting, unique technologies. The horizontal drilling, and I'm not an oil and gas person. I'm learning.
Same.
I've never even been on an oil field or patch, or I don't know what y'all call it.
Well, we share that.
Okay. So from what I understand, horizontal drilling, they use a device called an MWD, measure while drilling device. This is devices they use to navigate underground while they're drilling. For them to be able to navigate that device, they don't get access to GPS underground. So they use inertial navigation solutions. And the inertial navigation solution that they use most are fiber optic gyroscopes that you use 3 of them to give you 3 axes of motion. And then you stack that with some other technology and you have an inertial measurement unit. We've been using inertial measurement units to fly stuff since the 40s, not fogs and stuff, all that other
Sure.
stuff. But we in the 1970s, we started using fiber optic gyroscopes to do that same thing. It's a 1-for-1 technology. If you're making MWDs, look into seeing what you can do with the aerospace community, because the first thing, if you're going to launch a rocket or a satellite or anything into space, the first thing you need to order is your IMU, because it's the last thing you're going to receive. It takes a long time to make it.
What are the things that you're excited about
It's the
regarding space in the future?
Oh, in the future, it's to see what happens when one technology changes everything about what we do and operate in space. And I think that what that is going to be is the refueling in space.
Okay.
Because imagine you're going to go buy a car, but the gas tank is sealed. The gas that you buy that car with is the life of that car. That is satellites right now.
Okay. It's like my battery in my iPhone.
Yeah, and your iPhone goes dead. You can't recharge it.
Right.
There's no plug for that. You got to throw it in the trash.
Okay.
That is satellites right now.
Okay.
So we build a satellite, and let's say the satellite mission is 5 years. We build that satellite to hold 5 years worth of fuel. What happens when you want your car to last for 5 years of fuel? You need an 18-wheeler with a tank on the back of it, and you're probably just towing your car around at that point.
Sure.
So that's kind of like the analogy of where we're at with space and these satellites. Going to in-space services and in-orbit refueling means that these satellites are going to shrink drastically. You can build a satellite that has 3 months of fuel in it and get refueled every 3 months or once a year. Your satellite will be 1/5 the size. Or it can stay the massive size that it is now, but you can put a lot more stuff on it. There's just be a lot of differences. I'm not sure where the space industry or the operations are going to go when that happens. I'm very excited to see that. The defensibility of space, I'm really excited about the hypersonic stuff, specifically point to point, because I think that's what's going to really turn up the space industry, economy that I was talking about. Imagine in a world where we're able to deliver people and products around the world within 45 minutes. And who's going to be the first one to use that service and why? If you want to go to dinner in Paris tonight, you can get on a flight in 45 minutes and be in Paris.
I mean, I
come
can
back. Right.
because
But that's the future that we're looking at right now.
I see. Okay.
And so it's seeing who's going to use that first. And yeah, obviously government's going to need to be involved with that.
Sure.
The obvious answer is, well, let's get 4 tanks over in the middle of whatever place at random time in 45 minutes. That's great. But
Or my Amazon delivery.
yeah,
That's fine too. I mean,
that would be fun.
faster than a day. I mean, give it to me.
Yeah, 45 minutes for anywhere in the world. Done. But those 2 things are really exciting. And then the lunar operations. Texas has been shining brighter than any other state in this country right now. They are leading the way in lunar developments. We've had 2 commercial companies. Well, I'll talk about this for a second. The 2 commercial companies in the state of Texas have gone to the moon and put Texas flags on the moon. Are you aware of that?
I'm not.
There are 3 Texas flags on the moon now.
Sweet.
And it's all happened within a year. So Intuitive Machines was the first company to go to the moon, and they landed on the moon. And they planted the first flag, I think it was March last year. Then on Texas Independence Day this year, Firefly landed on the dark side of the moon. They say that they were the first successful landing on the moon because they landed flat. We're still learning a lot about the moon, so we'll see how the landings will improve and continue to improve. I'm really happy to see the Firefly was able to make it to the moon and land flat. They were able to get a Texas flag on the dark side of the moon, and then Intuitive Machines landed the next week on the moon, and they put that 3rd Texas flag on the moon.
What's the significance of landing on the moon just as a whole?
So
because from what I know, and I don't know a lot, right? The satellites are obviously a lot closer to Earth and Earth's orbit than the moon,
Yes.
right? And so, like, if we're going well past
Yeah, yeah.
the cislunar, you said cislunar, that means the space between the Earth and the moon, right? That's
Correct.
okay. So what is that significance? Why would we want to continue? Do we want to have full encampments on the moon?
Yes.
Okay. Why is
Moon
that?
bases. It's the high ground. It's the ultimate high ground.
Okay. Okay.
Commercially, this also does other things for us. It allows us a gateway to continue to further explore into space and create habitats into space, going to Mars, going to the asteroid belt.
Okay.
And everybody's heard, a lot of people heard stories about the asteroids. You know, it's a 16,000 ton platinum block out there. I need to go get it and bring it back to
Okay. We
Earth.
need to mine that.
Right.
Okay.
So that's part of it. That's a commercial endeavor that's probably going to happen in the next couple.
So the moons get you to the asteroids get you to Mars, and so on and so forth, or the other way around.
Yeah, yeah, it's Moon, Mars, then the asteroid belt.
Okay.
But it's all in that development. Now that's commercially. Also on the moon, there's a very unique element. It's called helium-3. Have you heard of this?
No.
So helium-3 is a compound that's only available on the moon. And the best way the benefit of it, 16 ounces of helium-3 would power Midland for a year.
Well, oh, okay. Hold on.
2 years ago,
Right.
I checked the price of helium-3. It was $43,000 a gram.
Wow.
The only country that's able to touch and test, been able to touch and test with helium-3 that I understand and know about, is China.
Okay.
And so that is a massive thing. We need to collect helium-3 to be able to power ourselves on the moon.
Wow. Okay.
And then, and I mentioned it's the ultimate high ground.
Yeah.
Communications from the moon. How can I put this?
So I'm thinking, like, we were talking about high ground. I'm thinking from like a strategic
Yes.
defense. You've got the larger view, right?
Yeah.
Basically of everyone.
Yes.
Okay.
And when you're traveling, you're in, let's say there's layers to space. So as soon as you go to space, there's something called low Earth orbit, and that's
Okay.
where most commercial activities are occurring. That's
Okay.
where the Starlinks are, and everybody else, most satellites. Low Earth orbit is great. When a satellite is in low Earth orbit, it is traveling around the world every 90 minutes. So you're able to know everything that's going on in that little strip of the Earth every 90 minutes.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
You go out a little further, you're in medium Earth orbit, and that's kind of a similar situation. You're not going around the world that fast. And you go to geospatial orbit, which is 34,000 kilometers away, and you get locked in a position where Florida is just looked at, or whatever, you know, it happens to be positioned over. And as the Earth turns, that satellite's going with it. That's the significance of geospatial orbit. You can monitor a place at all times or provide data and services from that place at all times. The moon has its own orbit around it.
Mm-hmm.
It also has its land. There's no land in space. And so creating habitats there, doing more research and development is absolutely necessary for us to continue to explore other planets. This is like the first step to interplanetary humanity.
Okay. Makes sense.
And yes, the high ground, being able to see Earth every 90 minutes, being able to monitor a place at any time, and then being able to have the power of the moon, power the moon, and then use that power is incredible for our future. And we'll see.
Obviously, like, I've grown up with sci-fi and things like that, right? And obviously, I mean, I think the majority of people will take a lot of this information for granted, like just have no sense of what really goes on in space other than what you've seen on television, movies, things like that.
Yeah.
Right? Fiction, I guess. But what are some realistic applications that, because I start to go like, well, yeah, sure, but not in my lifetime, or things like that. Like what are some applications that you feel like will still be in our lifetime? Like, how fast is this happening?
I think my sons asked me if they can go to space, and the answer is 2050.
2050?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think we'll be able to take flights to space as equivalently priced as me and you go, or me and somebody going on a vacation to Florida. We'll take a vacation to space.
Free bags or no? Or are we gonna go this?
Bring some extra clothes, maybe.
Okay. Wow. So that's a lot sooner than I was expecting.
And that's a pretty big advancement.
Sure.
The a lot of the other things we'll see, the point-to-point delivery that I'm talking about,
Yeah.
you see Starship. And by the way, this is another Texas exceptionalism thing. The largest thing put into space was put into space by a Texas company. That was happened last year with Starship. The Starship is a great product for delivering large amounts of products around the world rapidly. That's called point-to-point delivery. Midland's going to play a huge role in that.
You were talking about like education. So let's talk about education.
Yeah.
There's going to be these, you know, very high tech companies obviously are being built here, space economy industries. Where does sort of like Texas fall into that? Where does education and parents and students and like STEM and things like that? Talk a little bit about that.
Midland Independent School District has over 26,000 students in
Yeah.
it. In my opinion, we should shotgun every single space STEM opportunity we can. And there's a very unique reason for this from what I've experienced. In 2023, I was with a startup called Mock Industries,
Okay.
and we were working on hypersonic defensibility and hydrogen generation and cool stuff like that. But the unique thing about that company was it was founded by a 19-year-old who built a light gas gun and a hydrogen generator at MIT,
Okay.
and then found great success as a founder and moved to Austin. He found a couple of us that had been working in defense, and we started building up tech, and he was able to raise $84 million in 4 months. It was an incredible fundraise. Now, the whole thing about their success, he didn't go to MIT and learn everything within a semester and then make this.
Right.
Him and every other person on that team started building stuff when they were 12. Whether it was 3D printers, computers, servers, RC cars, drones, whatever it was, they were messing with emerging technologies. So getting the children involved as early as possible means they're going to succeed as early as possible, as early as imaginable.
Yeah.
Which is, that's why I think that I'd love to see more 19-year-olds create $100 million companies.
Sure.
Now, on the other side, we have a responsibility to create the freedom and defensibility in space, freedom of operation in space. And my sons are not going to lose that opportunity. But we're not going to give them a bag of bad goods either. We need to give them an opportunity to accelerate their generation technology. We should be developing technology to the point where we cannot anymore, and they can pick up the ball and develop it throughout their generation. But the onus is on us to educate them about that.
Right.
And so I think Midland's doing great with how they're educating. We have the sounding rocket competition here in June.
It's coming in June. Yeah.
500 participants. I think that's the largest sounding rocket competition in the world, maybe. If not, it's definitely in the US. It's these opportunities. We have Space Nation providing space STEM education. Tomorrow, we're going to have SWIFT, Space Workforce Innovation for Texas. What they're providing is universities with rocket experiential labs. And so if you're going to school to be a rocket scientist, you can join SWIFT as a student and then learn how to actually do testing and development on a bipropellant planes. Bipropellant rocket. This is no joke, go to space rocket. Imagine that you got your brand new diploma and you're going for a job, and the other guy has a brand new diploma and a picture of him with a rocket. He's getting the job.
Sure.
So that's what SWIFT's providing right now across the state of Texas. So not only with education, but we need to focus on workforce too. And those things are happening. We can always do more. So there's esports competitions that helps with people understanding command and control, solving space problems. Then you have drone competitions. Once again, command and control, that's software. It can be in additive manufacturing. It can be coding, cybersecurity, it can be a lot of things with drones. So we just do a lot of that.
Super fascinating, man. Like I didn't know what to really expect having you come in today. Just obviously with your background, but I mean just a lot of terms and ideas and things that are coming fast at me, and I was just like, oh, okay, this is super fascinating stuff. Is there what else is like coming down the line for your chapter, for the Texas chapter in SFA, like throughout the year?
The Texas chapter is the largest SFA chapter. We're also the fastest growing chapter.
Okay.
When I started the Texas chapter, I recognized, I thought that, hey, there's some people in Austin doing some space stuff and definitely people in Houston doing space stuff. But no, there's people from Orange County to El Paso County working in space. And so I was like, okay, wow, this is huge. We need to create committees all over the state of Texas and treat them like touch points where we can understand intimately what's going on in that community and for space. So I started this in Austin with the Texas chapter. And I started traveling around the state of Texas, just meeting with communities, understanding where they're at with space, what they want to learn. I came to Midland and I didn't go anywhere else. Um, so we started the Houston committee. We have an Austin committee. We have a San Antonio committee, a Brownsville committee. We have a Midland committee too. But the Midland committee is special. It hosts this SFA Texas headquarters. And so we're headquartered here in Midland, and we focus on providing that information, advocacy and education.
Right. And you have, it's like you have a membership.
Yes.
How does that work?
So we have individual memberships. It's $35 a year to join. And you'll get a monthly newsletters and all this other stuff. You have volunteer opportunities. We're looking for volunteers that want to do anything from social media management to actually doing space STEM education.
Okay.
And even if somebody wants to volunteer just to go out and find a few space STEM education people and put on a conference for them to do their thing with the kids, we want to support that too. Anything we can do to help grow the space industry helps the Space Force, because the Space Force is we're in a unique position here. This isn't a generational opportunity. This is a once in a century opportunity. The last time a military organization was started was in the 1940s, and that was the Air Force. Now we have the Space Force coming alive in 2019. Wonderful. They came alive during a time where we already had space operations occurring. So when tanks came out, the Army couldn't just go to Walmart or wherever and go buy tanks, the tank store. They had to go and contract companies to develop this and blah, blah, blah. The Space Force doesn't have to do that. They can utilize the activities of the commercial industry to provide that information security, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And through that, they're able to maintain a global awareness of what's going on. If there's a missile that pops off in the world, they will know about it and they will be able to take care of it or deploy a team that can take care of it, whether it's their agency or another. The reason it's such a unique time, I mean, that piece, that Space Force piece being this once in 100-year opportunity, on top of that, the commercial space industry being turned on in 2015. And now we're looking at stuff like AI and automated flights, computer vision, machine learning, all these other things, and just rapid developments that are happening one after the other. Emerging technologies are able to beat our government at name a government policy that adopts AI. But AI, we've been using AI for years.
Sure.
That's kind of the unique thing. It's a wonderful time to be alive. Midland's doing all the right things. So Midland has a spaceport. They started the spaceport in 2014. They have the high-speed corridors. Those corridors are 350 miles long. You're allowed to fly supersonic and hypersonic on these commercially. The FAA banned that in 1970, but with our corridor, you can do it. Now, and that corridor, where does it go? It goes to Spaceport America. Spaceport America is in New Mexico. It's right north of White Sands Missile Range.
Okay.
So White Sands, so you can fly across you can't fly across White Sands Missile Range commercially, but if you had a government contract to be able to fly into White Sands Missile Range, hypersonic speed is 1,715 meters per second or 1.7 kilometers per second.
Okay.
You would travel 250 miles in less than 2 minutes.
Jeez.
And so to do hypersonic defensibility testing means when we talk to the interceptions, I'm going to throw a rock at your rock, right? If your rock's going 1.7 kilometers per second and I need to throw a rock to hit your rock, I should throw a few rocks.
Sure. Okay.
And my rock should be really fast too. But to understand the flight parameters and how to detect that threat, how to track that threat, how to engage with that threat, we need a lot more than 2 minutes of data. We have to be able to fly that target a lot further. Midland Spaceport could fly a hypersonic target into White Sands Missile Range for them to be able to understand, it's called DTE, detect, track, and engage, to understand the detect, track, and engage parameters of hypersonic flight using the high-speed corridor that Midland offers. That is a great example of how Midland was forward thinking. Another is that, this is kind of Texas too, it's the way of Texans. We want to make things reduce risk where we can, go as fast as we can. We don't want to talk about it. We want to be about it.
Right.
And so at the Midland Spaceport, if you're doing bipropellant rocket development, solid state rocket fuels, these are very chemical heavy things that you don't want getting spilled anywhere. The spaceport has the licenses for that stuff. They have the permits for it. The companies can fall under those permits and then just begin operations immediately. I can just tell you wonderful success stories. Firehawk came here. They were on a contract with NASA to develop, I don't remember, maybe it was NASA, maybe it wasn't. They were on a contract with a government agency to develop a rocket motor, and they needed to test that rocket motor. They had an 18-month backlog at one of the government facilities to be able to test rocket motors.
Okay.
They came to Midland. Midland got them testing within 90 days. Impressive. That was a few years ago. And recently, Firehawk closed on a $60 million fundraise. I believe 100% that Firehawk was able to do that because they were able to do rapid, iterative testing here in Midland. And did anybody really notice that they're shooting on they're horizontally testing rocket motors right there next to UTPV?
No, I had no idea.
Yeah. And then Castillion's another great story. That's a company that's recently moved here. They're providing hypersonic rockets and missiles to our military. They once again, they were looking at long backlogs to be able to test their rocket. I believe it was 64 days within coming to Midland they were testing. Impressive, very impressive. And then you stack what was done with AST Mobile. Within 5 years, 6 years, a $10 billion space company, the second largest space company in our nation's right here in Midland, Texas. And how did that happen? And everybody's like, I don't know, they do great work. Yeah, they do great work, but they $10 billion great work. That's worthy of studying, and how it happened and why it happened. All of it. Their service they provide is wonderful, but yeah,
I'm glad that there's a lot more stories like this coming out, and I'm glad that you're here to help facilitate these stories that are coming out here, because I think the average person just wouldn't know, right? To be under their radar.
Yeah. And that's the other thing about the space industry itself, or aerospace itself. We say high speed, low drag, so we go as fast as we can. And so that doesn't mean we necessarily stop and explain to people what we're doing.
Sure.
So yeah, it's definitely flying under the radar sometimes for some people. We even have lunar projects here in Midland. Astroport, which is Exploration Architecture, owns that company. Astroport is here in Midland with WEX Foundation.
What do they do?
They do lunar moon. They survey the moon, they do construction on the moon, and all in a goal of an excavation on the moon. All in the goal of building landing pads on the moon. So on the moon, the moon was made a long time ago. From Earth, right? And so there's something hit Earth, and then some stuff fell off of Earth, and then it collected in an orbit, and then got kind of stuck, and pressures caused it to collect together, and then made a moon. That moon is mostly like powderized metal is the best way I can explain it. There's lava tubes in there and all kinds of other stuff. I've never been there. I'm not from there either.
Oh, okay. East Texas.
East Texas.
Yeah.
But so Astroport, what they're doing is really interesting. So they've designed rovers, and they're working on getting these rovers into final stages so that they can get the certificate of conformance and go to the moon. But they've built rovers that take moon's regolith, which is, we would call it soil here on Earth.
Okay.
So moon regolith, and they're able to heat it up to a specific temperature, and that kind of glassifies it and turns into a tile. And then that rover is able to lay that tile down, and then lay the next tile and lay the next tile and build this entire landing pad. The necessity for that is because when you land on if you go land a rocket on the moon, I mean, I'm sure you've seen space landings or recovered rockets from SpaceX. There's a lot of plume and dust and stuff. On the moon, it would be everywhere. And really, it's 1/6 the gravity. There's no atmosphere there. So you're dealing with direct sun's energy. It causes ionization. These particles become magnetic. You don't want to disturb that as little as you possibly can. So Astroport's out there trying to save us and make it possible for people to land on the moon by surveying the moon, excavating the moon, and constructing landing pads on the moon from Midland, Texas.
This is fascinating, man. Jeez. I had no idea. Like, I was just like,
cool stuff.
Yeah, this is all happening here. And I was just like, I'm just kind of doing my thing every day, not realizing that these billion-dollar companies are coming out of here outside of oil and gas. This is amazing. You mentioned AI a little while back.
Yeah.
I know that you sort of like you help run a startup. Are you the founder or you work with it?
Yeah, I'm the strategic growth officer of Intellectable,
Okay.
and it's a very unique platform. It's a lot of people ask me like, how are you able to know all this stuff? How are you able to do all this stuff? Because I have Intellectable. I
Okay.
cheat. I'm the fastest man in the world because of it.
Nice.
Intellectable is a is an AI based platform. It uses something called RAG. You've heard of LLMs?
Yes.
So LLMs are large language models
Right.
that are specifically they have lots of information built in them, and they're coded to satisfy you, give
Okay.
you the answer that you want.
Right.
On average, they're about 70% correct. You hear a lot about hallucinations. Now, retrieval augmented generation, RAG AI.
Okay.
Think about when you look at your computer, think about your computer looking at the screen itself and learning everything that's on the screen and being fully contextually aware of what is in that document. And so with Intellectable, I'm able to put in the entire US tax code, 100,000 page documents, and be able to assess those documents within seconds. I do this a lot for National Defense Authorization Act. Authorization Act, it comes out every year. It tells you the budget on what national defense is authorized to spend. I can digest that it's usually 2,500, 3,500 pages. I can digest that document in 15 to 20 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
Because of Intellectable. It's an incredible tool. We sell that product to help consultancies and DoD companies and universities basically win more work. They're able to rapidly assess market trends and then be able to respond to those market trends with proposals almost instantly. We automate a lot of these processes so that it's if you do something more than once, it should just be automated.
Right.
Intellectable does that for us.
How'd you get started with that company?
We started this a couple years ago, actually.
Oh, wow.
And then we raised 1.5 million last year, and to kind of start, and then we started getting customers and really deployed the product. But we started with a simple thesis, and it was what happens when you have perfect access to perfect information all the time? Well, people win work faster than other people, and it's really incredible. So I like that a lot. The stacking, giving a blank large language model that's trained immediately by retrieval augmented generation system is changes the way AI should be used as a business solution.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the majority of people, they're, I guess AI right now is they're probably familiar with the chat GPTs
Yeah.
and
The
sort of
popular
the spawns.
LLMs,
Yeah, yeah, the spawns that are coming off of that. But this seems a lot more intensive. I'd love to check it out sometime. I'm just curious about that type of stuff. And
Yeah, it's a very powerful platform.
okay, Intellectable.
Intellectable.
Well, hey man, I really appreciate you coming in. This was fantastic. I love this conversation. I'm super fascinated. Want to become a member? We'll put the links below. We'll put your social media, SFA, Midland. Is it Texas or Chap?
Oh, we have SFA Texas.
Okay.
We have SFA Midland as well.
Okay, we'll throw all those in.
Yeah.
Follow, become a member. I'm going to go to space camp,
Good.
and I'll see you soon.
Yes, sir.
Thanks again, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Space.
Let's do it.
All right.
See you on the next one. Bye.